Hello everyone. I am Diksha Mohapatra. I'm a third year podiatric medical student. And then we also have Yona Mizrahi, who is also a third year podiatric medical student. We both created a YouTube channel called the DPM Journey and an Instagram called the DPM Journey to share information about podiatric medicine because it's not commonly shared out there in a lot of schools. And so I think it's very important to share this other pathway to becoming a physician. So first of all, what is a podiatrist? So podiatrist is a physician, surgeon who treats the foot and ankle and related structures of the lower extremities. Podiatric physicians treat a wide variety of symptoms and conditions that patients have. The patients they treat can range from pediatrics to geriatrics and athletes to diabetic patients. Podiatrists see a variety of patients every day. They can provide immediate relief to patients for their pain or their discomfort. They build rapport with their patients because they literally treat the same patient, oftentimes from diagnosis through treatment, surgery, and recovery. So many podiatrists enjoy a healthy work life balance, working about 40 to 60 hours in a week, depending on what you decide to do as a podiatrist, and earning just as much as their other physician peers do. Specific cases that podiatrists have are bunions, foot pain, nail care, ulcers or wounds, fractures, nerve-related conditions. We literally treat everything that's related to the foot and ankle. And you'll see what I mean by that when we go through more of this presentation. Podiatrists can pursue surgery, sports medicine, dermatology, pediatrics, wound care, diabetic care, forensics, which is really cool, and so much more. So we can treat all specialties even in the same day, maybe several of them with one patient even. Some of the practice settings that we have are private practice, hospitals, emergency room, urgent trauma care facilities, sports teams, VA hospitals. Podiatrists work with other medical professionals as well. By that, we've seen that we work with many of them, but some specific ones that we mostly work with are vascular surgeons, because sometimes our patients may need help with maybe just kicking back up their blood flow or something related to that. And we also often work side by side with orthopedic surgeons. Say they'd like to treat something, but they needed our help to just work with that while they treat another part of the body. Similar conditions like that, similar instances like that. Okay, Yona, your turn.
Yeah, so looking at the timeline at how long it takes to become an actual podiatrist. So, not a lot of people know this, but we actually go through 4 years of podiatric medical school. And the first 2 years of podiatric medical school consist of your didactics, which is just like some of the classes you're taking in college, such as biochemistry, physiology, human anatomy. But we also take lower extremity specific courses such as podiatric surgery, podiatric medicine, and biomechanics. And so that's your first 2 years. And then typically around the end of your second year or beginning of your third year, you start to do clinical work where you go to actually local hospitals around your area, training under attendings and other surgeons in those practices and learning from them firsthand some of the things you've learned your first 2 years of podiatric medical school. And then your fourth year consists of 1 year of externships where you basically visit residencies for 1 month and you see how that residency program is like. They're pretty much seeing if you're the right fit for that residency program. And by the end of your fourth year, you're basically informed if you match with that residency program or not. And then after you did your 4 years of podiatric medical school, then you do 3 years of surgical based residency. And I emphasize surgical because all podiatrists actually go through a surgical based residency and they ultimately become surgeons at the end of the day. That doesn't mean you have to practice surgery after your 3 years of surgical residency, but most podiatrists actually do. And then after 3 years of surgical residency, where you are doing rotations through orthopedics, through vascular, through um, a lot of other things, which you are also working with other MDDO students as well. After those 3 years, you can have an optional of 1 to 2 years of fellowship, and fellowship consists of, let's say, sports medicine, dermatology, forefoot and rear foot reconstruction surgery. There's a lot to do with your fellowships, and it's just a more specialized way of like honing in on something that you want to practice more in the future as you become a practicing podiatrist.
And I just wanted to clarify something. I know that some of you are early on in your college careers, I believe. So, um, in case you didn't know this, your last year of medical school, whether it's MD, DO, or DPM, we all actually have to do the externship year. It's not always called externship year. Some people call it sub-I, like sub internship year, that sort of thing. But during that time, like Yona was saying, it's basically like an interview for residencies, and you go to different clinics that you would possibly be interested in doing your residency at. Um, so yeah, it's the same thing as MDDO. The only difference is we are lower extremity, or we emphasize lower extremity classes on top of the regular medical school education.
So looking at applications, all applications for all podiatric medical schools are on a rolling basis. So that means that the earlier you apply, the better your chances are. And we encourage students, a lot of students who are applying, to apply as early as possible, because a lot of schools do have a sort of scholarship fund or a scholarship pool for students who accept early, and so you have more of a chance actually getting that money provided for you. So for our school, which is CSPM, we actually have scholarships ranging from $10,000 to $15,000, and these scholarships are actually renewable every year. And these scholarships are based off your merit. So let's say your GPA, your MCAT scores. And looking at the last point on the slide, 99% of podiatry students after graduating are ultimately placed in a residency program. And that's huge because we actually have a surplus of residency programs across the country. So you'll never find yourself actually scrambling for a residency program usually. So that's a really good sign if you want to get into this field. So requirements. The requirements are actually not really different from MD and DO programs that you want to apply for. You still have to take the MCAT. You still have to do all your prerequisite classes such as biology, chemistry, OChem, and physics. And I would say the only big differences would be first the statistics. So looking at the average MCAT score, it's around a 500. The average cumulative GPA is around a 3.3, and the average science GPA is a 3.2. And for letter of recommendations, as you guys know, or if you guys will learn in the future, you are going to have letters of recommendations when you're applying to MDDO or DPM. But for us in particularly, a lot of podiatry schools, or I believe 8 out of the 9 podiatry schools, require you to shadow a podiatrist and get a letter of recommendation from that doctor. So that's something unique about the admissions process and the requirements needed. And then, of course, there's a personal interview that you will be invited to attend. And during this time, it will probably be most likely virtual.
And I again wanted to add a few things. So the although the requirements are a little lower, you do want to make sure, especially if you're trying to apply to all three, DO, MD, and DPM, you want to make sure you're doing your best that you possibly can do, because not only is it for your application's sake, but also because you want to make sure you can do well in medical school. You want to put your best foot forward. It might seem like a lot of the classes you're taking aren't related to medicine, and I can see why you'd feel that way. I felt that way. Many of us have felt that way, but we do have to take a lot of those same courses again, or at least we need to have a good foundation of it from college, because you will be seeing a lot of that material again repeated in medical school. And so it's important that you try to do your best in all those courses and remember that material. And also, you want to, the reason why, other than the requirement that you should definitely, oh, I don't think we mentioned this here, but you should shadow a podiatrist or MDDO and MDDO because you want to know exactly what you're interested in. You want to be able to really emphasize that in your application, in your interview, because you will be asked, especially if you're applying to podiatric medical school, you will be asked, why not MDDO? You know, why do you want this specialty? Because this is very specific. So make sure that you get enough shadowing done if you decide to do this so that you know why, you have good reasoning, and you know for yourself as well.
So looking at all the podiatry schools listed here, there's actually 9. So there's not a lot of podiatry schools actually nationwide. But that just means that it's a little bit more competitive as you're applying to each school and depending on the area you want to attend. So there's one in Arizona, Midwestern University. There's Barry University, which is in Miami. California School of Podiatric Medicine at Samuel Merritt University. That's where we attend. That's actually in the Oakland Bay area. Des Moines University, Kent State University, that is in Ohio, Independence, Ohio. New York College of Podiatric Medicine, Scholl College of Podiatric Medicine, Temple, which I believe is in Chicago, and then Western University of Health and Sciences, which is in Southern California in Pomona.
Again, just to add on. So Scholl is in Chicago, and then Temple is in Philadelphia. Yeah, and I think you mentioned all the other ones. Oh, and then there's one other school that's opening up. I believe it's in Texas, right, Yona?
Yeah, it's in Texas.
Yeah. So, yeah, the thing with these schools is we have a lot less because we're still a growing field. A lot of people don't know about it yet, which is why it's as Christina had titled this, it's a hidden gem in healthcare because a lot of people don't know about it yet, and that's why we definitely have lower statistics right now, but it's slowly getting higher. Obviously, just like in DOMD schools, it's getting more and more competitive. So if you're interested, definitely apply now while you can, and while it's yeah, while you have a higher chance than you may in the future.
So why podiatry? Why do you want to enter this specialized field? So here are some of the key points that are really cool about our full field. So all podiatric medical students are trained as surgeons from day one through our curriculum, and we have to complete a 3-year surgical residency upon graduation from podiatric medical school. So you're basically guaranteed to be a surgeon in this field. And I know a lot of people who apply to medical school want to be surgeons at the end of the day. And sometimes you don't get that residency match that you wanted that will give you that surgery lifestyle. So um, yeah, this field automatically provides you to become a surgeon at the end of the day. Uh, Looking at points 2 and 3, stress-free and a great work-life balance. I think one of the things that podiatrists pride themselves in is that they have a great work-life balance, and they usually work a 9 to 5 job every day. And for the most part, podiatrists are actually not on call. You can choose to be a so-called trauma surgeon as a podiatrist who will see traumatic cases and be on call for those things. But usually, if you talk to a podiatrist, it's a very laid-back lifestyle, and they're able to be with their family and balance that out with their work. And number 4 and number 5, so seeing positive results fast. Again, as podiatrists, we do a lot of conservative treatment, and our first action and when we're treating a patient is to look at them conservatively and not jump the gun on surgery, because That's very drastic, and it could be actually more detrimental for the patient. So we like to take things slower with the patient, and this is why we're able to develop personal relationships over time, because a lot of the patients we actually see, um, some of them could be diabetics who have peripheral arterial disease, and they require long-term care, and this is why we're able to develop these personal relationships with them, and it's really nice to see this grow as we go through our profession. And ability to specialize in a lot of subspecialties. Like Diksha mentioned previously, um, there's a lot of subspecialties in podiatry. Yes, we focus on the lower extremities, such as the foot and ankle, but that doesn't mean you can't specialize in sports medicine, in trauma, in public health, in rear foot, forefoot reconstruction. And for the most part, so for our biomechanics professor, he's actually a sports medicine podiatrist, and he actually has worked with big teams such as the Golden State Warriors, and he loves his job, and it's really fun for him, and he's specialized in that. But that doesn't take away from the fact that he can't do anything else. He's just more specialized in sports medicine. And then ultimately, at the end of the day, you are a physician, you are a doctor. We go through 4 years of medical school, we go through 3 years of surgical residency, and then we have this option of 1 to 2 years of fellowship. So at the end of the day, you're looking upwards from 8 to 10 years of schooling to become a physician.
And then one other thing that I forgot to mention on this slide, or that we both forgot to mention, was that it's also still a very small field. So everyone knows each other. Everyone in the field knows each other. So the good thing about that is that you have a tight-knit community. If you need help, you just want assistance with something, there's always someone out there to help you out. And from what we've seen, podiatrists just tend to be very supportive people, very kind, and willing to help out all the time, even for reaching out, for shadowing and everything.
So I think so. We are done with our presentation, and now we're going to open it up to you guys to ask us any questions. And feel free to ask us any type of questions, anything about the MCAT, to podiatry school, about any curriculum stuff, about lifestyle. We'd just like to hear from you guys and what you guys want to know about this field.
So since we have only three attendees, I'm gonna allow you to talk. So you guys can ask questions in person, or you can choose to type it into the Q&A. And this is a great opportunity for you to learn a little bit more about the profession from people who are training to be podiatrists. One thing that I would like to ask to start us off is that our pre-med, pre-health students are always looking for opportunities to expose themselves to these professions in person. So can you suggest any ways that they can maybe volunteer, shadow podiatrists to get a first-hand experience of this field?
Diksha, I'm looking for the step in. Okay, I got it.
Yeah, so there is a website that um, the the National Podiatry Organization has created. Okay, yeah, Yona just shared it in the chat. So you can just go to that website and put in input wherever you are located right now. Or honestly, because it's COVID right now and a lot of shadowing opportunities are virtual, you can just input any area and check out any of the podiatrists who might be willing to let you shadow. And so it can be from anywhere in the US. It obviously doesn't have to be where you are right now. Say you're in LA, you could shadow someone in Florida if that's what is available at this time.
Yeah, so the link I sent to everybody, you can again check up a podiatrist who's willing to take on students or who's willing to talk to students and mentor them and talk to them about the profession. So that's a really good link I would say I would start with if you're really interested in this field. Also, for me personally, I cold called a bunch of podiatrists around my surrounding area, And honestly, I had very receptive feedback from them, and they were willing to allow me to shadow. But I know there's some students actually during this time who are also calling podiatrists and setting up Skype meetings, and they have a bunch of questions set out and just talking to these podiatrists for, let's say, an hour to 2 hours long, just getting all their questions answered. So I would say that that's a really good way to just start off if you're a student, especially in college.
Also, a suggestion before we answer the question, um, another suggestion is that I would not suggest that you email the doctors, because I know a lot of students, pre-med students, have been doing that, and that's just harder because a lot of these podiatrists are busy and they're question or a lot of emails, and so they don't have time, or they might miss your email. So I would rather suggest that you call the office, and at least someone at the front desk will maybe write your name down and um, you know, relay your message to the doctor. Okay, so Yona, would you like to answer? Why did you choose podiatry?
Why did you two choose podiatry? Okay, so personally, I chose podiatry because of my overall history of things I've been through in my life. I've had 5 foot surgeries, and all of them were flat foot reconstructive foot surgeries. And just learning from those experiences and struggling with that, and seeing just my overall journey led me to wanting something in the foot and ankle region. Um, And so I shadowed previously orthopedic surgeons, and all my surgeries were actually done by orthopedic surgeons. And I really thought this was the field for me, and I really wanted to be part of this field, just orthopedics in general. But my friend during my junior year of college actually suggested to me that there's doctors out there who actually specialize in the foot and ankle, um, podiatrists. And so I was like, oh well, I was very interested and intrigued about that. And so I called my 2 local podiatrists that are around my area and shadowed them for 3 months, and I really fell in love with the field. Just seeing how the conservative treatment of things and how they were establishing personal relationships with their patients, as well as seeing the amazing work-life balance and ultimately becoming surgeons. I thought, wow, I don't want to miss up on this opportunity, and this was just perfect. It aligned with my experiences and my values, and I definitely wanted to be part of that field. So just with all of that being said, that's ultimately why I chose podiatry and why I'm enjoying myself now as a third year podiatric medical student.
Yeah, I always like hearing Yona's story because it's very inspirational. My story is so basically I was all over the place. When I was in college, all I knew is that I wanted to be a primary care physician, and that's all I could see myself doing. And after college, I pursued I took a few gap years. I worked and I retook the MCAT, and then I did a special master's program, which I'm sure you all know, but a special master's program is like a post-bac, except the one I was doing was literally the first year. I was with first year DO students, so I technically took my first year twice. So I did it at osteopathic medical school and also podiatric medical school. But when I was there towards the end, I started rethinking what I wanted to do because it was starting to get very stressful. Honestly, I was just stressing myself out, and I was letting advisors get to me, um, telling me that maybe this isn't the field for me, that medicine, I might not be cut out for medicine. So that made me rethink, maybe this isn't right. It got to my head. And so I started looking into other careers, and I almost decided to choose something that wasn't in healthcare until I was talking to some of my friends who were already in podiatric medical school. They were telling me that it's strange because I honestly thought I wasn't going to go for medicine, but then these friends called me and just said, Diksha, I know you're feeling this way, but what if you just went to a medical school that was very specific and was tailored to everything you're interested in. And so I gave it a shot because at that point, I wasn't sure what was going to happen. So I shadowed podiatrists. And honestly, I was scared. I was very alarmed the first time I went in because I saw a foot, pre-amputation. So it was in a very severe condition, and it was a lot to take in as my first experience with this. So it took me some time, but I kept coming back and shadowed enough that I knew whether this was the right thing for me. And it was because there is so much variety. The reason why I wanted to do primary care is because I could see so many cases and I could know a little bit about everything. And I wanted to be that kind of person. But even though this is a specialty, you can get that out of podiatry. So that's what I really liked about it, because you're a specialist, but then you know everything about the foot and ankle. So you're looking at the dermatology, looking at biomechanics, which is like the physics of the feet. So you're looking at all of it. And that's what drew me towards podiatry. And then on top of it, knowing that I could say I was interested in orthopedics. It's actually harder, right? It's very competitive to get into orthopedics as a specialty when you're in MDDO school, because let's be honest, you have to take the USMLE, you have to perform well, and there's so many other people in your class who are interested as well. Whereas in podiatry, which is the closest thing to orthopedics, we're going into that school. If you get in, you're immediately already in that specialty. And that's something else that was alluring to me, along with work-life balance and basically everything that we had mentioned in the slides. So that's why I emphasize so much that shadowing is important. It's crucial because that's when it'll click for you if it hadn't before. Does anyone else have any questions? You can ask us about anything about college as well. That's a great question.
Oh yeah, that is a great question. Oh
wait, we should mention what the question was for
yeah.
people,
So
just in case.
I'll read it. Yona, you mentioned that surgery is a huge part of podiatry, and Diksha, you mentioned that you were stunned when you first saw your pre-amputated foot. Were either of you squeamish about things / how was adjusting to seeing that? I personally wasn't squeamish because I've had 5-foot surgeries, and after the third surgery, I asked the orthopedic surgeon to record it for me, and he showed me videos of my own surgery, and I thought that was really bad because it's weird seeing that you're asleep and someone's performing surgery on you, and then seeing how your foot is being operated and blood squirting out and tendons are being shown. I thought that was already traumatic enough for me to at least know if I could handle this field or not. So going in and shadowing a podiatrist and actually scrubbing into the surgeries as a college student and seeing what some of the surgeries I was seeing with the podiatrist, I thought this was honestly not that bad. After seeing my surgeries and after what I've been through, I was like, okay, this is really not that bad. And I honestly I didn't feel any screaming or anything like that when seeing these surgeries for the first time.
That I didn't know that. That's wild. So for me, I did. So that's actually why I was hesitant about podiatry even before exploring podiatry. I always thought that was something I could never do. There will be times where you come across a patient who has an infected, because like I said, we are dealing with everything with the foot and ankle. So you will come across patients who may have waited way too long. I mean, it's the foot ankle. So a lot of people think we take it for granted. And so a lot of people won't see the doctor until it's too late. So there will be patients who have a lot of odor. I'll just keep it at that. They have a lot of odor maybe in that region, or they just weren't very hygienic with their practices. And so those kind of things are alarming at first, but you do tend to get used to it because it's not so common. I mean, you can choose what kind of practice you want in the first place, but um, even if you do see it, you get used to it. You can choose not to see those patients, I'm sure. And um, yeah, I would just say once the first time, once you get through it the first time, which was how it was when I shadowed, once I got through it the first time, it didn't really phase me as much because you just start seeing it as a foot and ankle and something you have to deal with when you start thinking about the scientific side of things and what you've learned in classes. It's yeah, it's not that big of a deal after that. It's just like it's different than blood, for example. If you know you can't deal with blood, you don't go into this field or medicine, period. But this kind of stuff, you definitely can get well acquainted with it. And there are podiatrists out there who don't do anything that's related to that sort of thing. If they don't want to, like, they don't want to do wound care, they don't do it. They send them off to other podiatrists. Or if there's someone who just wants to do nail care, because I had just been worked with a doctor who was like that. She did a lot of wound care and nail care, and then for her, surgeries weren't as big of a deal on certain parts of the feet, so she would send those patients off to other podiatrists. So there's always a chance to customize what you want your practice to look like. Thank you for the question, by the way.
Yeah, that was a really good question. Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so the question is, if you could go back to college, is there anything you would change? Would you shadow more, take advantage of more resources? So I would say, again, I tried my best in college and I really wanted to be the best as that I could be. And again, I applied to MDDO and DPM. And so I would say that I was focusing on my classes a lot, but I personally didn't do well in certain classes and I didn't take advantage of, let's say, office hours or tutoring to get those better grades in your classes because at the end of the day, yes, statistically speaking, DPM or podiatry is lower in terms of GPA, in terms of MCAT, but I didn't want to just shoot for podiatry. I wanted to shoot for MD, DO, and DPM. I wanted all my options to be opened. And so sometimes I felt like, oh, maybe if I got a higher score in this or a higher score in this class, this would open more doors for me leading down the line, applying to MD, applying to DPO, or applying to DPM and getting a better merit-based scholarship. So I'd say definitely focusing on your classes and getting better grades is huge when it comes to showing your GPA as something that you will hold up when you're competing with other students when you're applying to the medical field. As far as shadowing goes, I felt like I did an adequate amount of shadowing. I shadowed two podiatrists, and each one I shadowed for a month and a half. And that was every Monday and every Friday. And I thought that was perfect because I got full exposure of everything. I knew exactly what they were doing, and I asked them a bunch of questions every day, sitting with them, going into the patient rooms, interacting with some of the patients, even doing some injections, which was really cool while I was guided with the podiatrist showing me how to do it. So I thought that was phenomenal. And I think shadowing, again, like Diksha has stressed and emphasized, you should all shadow, no matter if it's a podiatrist, you should shadow a orthopedic surgeon, which I did a few times. And the surgeons who I shadowed were the surgeons who did my surgery. And so they were really receptive about that. And they were really happy that I wanted to join the medical field, seeing that my experience was aligning with something along the medical school route. Um, as far as taking advantage of more resources, again, I would tell you guys to also don't be a typical medical school applicant, and I'm not saying that in a negative way. I'm just saying be aware that yes, it's good that you're shadowing at a hospital and you're doing your scribe work or you're doing becoming an EMT, and that's what a lot of SDN pages will tell you. But I would say take that with a little bit of a grain of salt and do things that you're really passionate about. And a lot of admissions will see that they will see that if you just scribe for 1 month, that's not really meaningful. Versus if you started your own club and you were president for 2 years for that club and you did X, Y, and Z for that club, that's more meaningful. And that will play a bigger role when it comes down to your application process, when you're talking about it with admissions, even when it comes down to interview day. And if they ask you that question, what were some meaningful experiences that you did in your college career and why has that shaped you to be into the medical field, or how has that shaped you to be the person you are today? And for me personally, I helped start a cooking club at UC Riverside, and it's still going on and it's doing great. And I was part of that cooking club for 2 years, and I was really passionate about cooking food, being very healthy, being very active, as well as cooking food for other students and showing them how to meal prep. And funny enough, when my interview came up for podiatry schools, a lot of the admissions officer asked me, um, what types of food do you like to cook? And how was your cooking experience? And why did you decide to open up a cooking club? And really, like half of my interview was just talking about my cooking experience and that sort of thing. And it was really cool. And it made things more comfortable. And so I'll just leave you guys with that um, general information. And hopefully you guys just take away that you should just be more aware of what you're doing, but don't just do things because it looks good on paper. Do things because you like it and do things that you're really passionate about as well.
Yes, so I agree with everything you said. Do things because you care about it. I was in a research program that I was not completely comfortable with, and I still stuck around for 2 years. So I would suggest not to do something like that. If you like a specific research project, do it, but not because you think it'll look good on your application, like Yona was saying. Just try to find something that fits you. And uh, I was something that I was really passionate about was something I found later on in college, which was I founded a mental health organization on my campus, and I put my heart and soul into it, and that's kind of what got me going every day, you know? And you need to have something like that, and I would highly suggest that, and um not to disconnect from people, because that was what I did and sometimes catch myself still doing because bad habits from college uh, continue on. But I mean, we're a social species, so make sure that you continue to keep in touch with friends and family, and have a little bit of a break every week, and try to balance out your schedule. Don't take 50 hard classes and think it'll be okay. And think about, unless you know you can handle it, of course. But otherwise, what I wish I had done, that a friend had told me about, is such great advice. He said in the beginning, start off with a good load, and then add a little bit on, one at a time, as your quarters go on or as your semester system goes on. Because I mean, since you're at UCLA, saying it's well, anyways, I don't know how the UCs are now, but whatever system you're in, just try to add on a few classes at a time, or harder, more advanced classes at a time. Don't just infiltrate all of those classes as advanced courses, because that's kind of what I was doing. And obviously, that was very tough on me. And that was the reason why I had to stick around and try to beef up my application. Um, just to save time. That's another reason you want to save time too, as best as you can. And don't try to follow someone else's timeline. That's also something I was doing. You're doing great. However you are, you're in your own path. So take classes that work with you, do activities that work with you. Don't try to shove in courses that don't work with you. Don't take classes just because someone said it'll look good on your application, it'll get you into medical school, because that's not true, right? Your entire application at the end of the day is a package deal, and you have something to offer that someone else might not have to offer. So you don't have to do that. Yeah. Thanks again for the questions. Keep them coming.
So the next question is, how would you recommend determining what career to pursue when you have multiple interests? For example, Yona, how did you know you didn't want to make cooking your career? Or Diksha, why didn't you pursue something related to mental health? I would love to make cooking my career. I'd still love to do that. But so how would you recommend determining what career to pursue when you have multiple interests? I think again, this comes down to the whole idea of shadowing. I think for me, okay, regardless of the cooking thing, there was again, it was between, for me, it was ultimately like between orthopedics and podiatry, and shadowing really helped set that apart in my head and what I wanted, which route I really wanted to take, and asking the questions and getting the answers that related with me and aligned with my morals. Um, and this is nothing against orthopedic surgeons, but and all my surgeries were done by orthopedic surgeons, but a lot of orthopedic surgeons I feel like are very um, th- they like to take the surgical approach to things. And yes, surgery works and certain sometimes it doesn't. And for me, I just didn't want to go into career knowing that most of my life will be around doing surgeries. And as much as I do love surgery, I think the outcomes of surgery can be a hit or miss. And for me, through my personal experiences, my first two surgeries were actually considered malpractice. And I was 15 at the time, and I knew this was really tough, and I wanted to do something to help back patients. And through my experiences, I knew that I wanted to give back. And yes, cooking was that sort of feeling of giving back, but I ultimately had a bigger purpose in life, which was serve just a bunch of patients who were dealing with similar issues that I've been dealing with in my whole life. And that was foot and ankle related traumas and problems. And I knew that I wanted to do something that was very holistic, but very conservative, and knowing that podiatry combined both of those aspects into one really aligned with my morals and values. And this is why I pursued podiatry over the orthopedic route. And this is why I think shadowing does help you also know which is best for you at the time when you're making that big decision when applying.
I really like this question because, yeah, what Yona said, we all have various interests. Like his was cooking, mine was mental health, mine continues to be mental health. And that doesn't mean that I can't pursue that any longer. There's actually a mental health app that one of our underclassmen created for our school, and so we're a part of that. Um, and I have written a paper about mental health and podiatry, trying to get that released soon. So the important thing is in the beginning, right? You're never too late to do this. I would go and take one of those career tests. I know they seem silly, but do it. Do it just because you learn a little bit about yourself, even if it gives you something that you may have already known. It's nice. It's while you're even taking it, you learn so much about yourself. So just try to see what kind of options they present to you and think about that, and think about where you can see yourself in your career, where you'd want to see yourself in the future. For me, I thought about it, and like I was thinking about naturopathic medicine, for example, and I heard from my brother who he went to UC Berkeley, so he was talking about how they sometimes have professionals present for one of his, I think it was his freshman year course, and he had a naturopathic medicine come in, and naturopathic doctor come in and say that okay, they went bankrupt, and that's kind of something that's happening in the field right now because it's very just there's so many people pursuing this career. And so that's why I thought about that and I was like, okay, even though I like that kind of thing, I like thinking about holistic medicine, I can't really apply that for myself because I can't see that being good for me long term because I want safety in my career. I want stability in my career. So seeing that I could put that and my mental health together with podiatry was very important to me, and also nutrition. Like you were saying, I have a lot of interest as well. Nutrition is something since my childhood that I was found very important. But I've noticed that people listen to I don't like to say this, but it's just it seems to be the truth in like in my around my family, friends, around family around the world that I have. It's just that people tend to heed the advice that comes from physicians, and knowing that I could have more authority when it comes to speaking about nutrition or mental health when I have that degree as well. It just meant more to me because I could take all my interests and apply that through podiatry. And so that's my reason why I pursued this. So you just have to write down all your interests and take that quiz, think about what it is that you could apply everything you're interested in into one, or what could be your primary career and then what you could do on the side for fun. Like Yona, he cooks incredible meals for us and all our friends and everything because he still has that and that interest, and he could still apply it in that fashion even though he's in podiatry.
So, do you guys have any more questions? I know there's two people in this room. And again, the questions are really good. They're really making us think and really answering them as best as we can. And honestly, any question we will accept and answer because we really enjoy answering these questions and they're really good for you guys. And I think it's going to help you in your college career when you're thinking about in the long run.
Something I'll just add on to that I don't think we had said earlier. When you go into a field like podiatry, I don't know about dentists and everything, but for podiatry, when you go in at the end, say you're in your third year or you just finished podiatric medical school, you cannot switch specialties. So say you found out that I don't know how I feel about podiatry anymore. You can't just switch to an MDDO school, even though, like we were saying, it's the exact same courses. As of now, it's not allowed in our country, at least. So hopefully in the future it is, but for right now it's not that way. So you would actually have to literally go through the application process to MDDO schools and start from scratch. So that's why, again, you want to shadow and know why you're doing what you're doing. And of course, in the future, if you have any questions, I think the best people to ask are students or professionals. Just ask them questions. It doesn't have to even just be from shadowing because you might not see everything that you want to see in shadowing. So you can ask and don't be afraid. So someone asks, it took you a while to figure out what to do. How did you figure out the next steps during your gap years, and what was your mental health or mindset like during that time? You asked the best questions. I mean, I'm assuming this is the same person, I'm not sure, but you both asked great questions. Um, yeah, so it was it was tough because I was my worst critique. So sure, advisors can tell you what they tell you, but at the end of the day, it's up to you. Um, since my first semester of first quarter of college, I didn't do well in one course. I think I got a B in a course or something, and after that, I was immediately thinking, "Oh no, how am I going to get into medical school?" Don't be like me. but that was me since the beginning. So I was constantly doubting myself. So after college, during those gap years, I was seeing friends who immediately say they didn't want to do, they weren't pre-med any longer, or they just went and pursued other careers, went for master's programs. And there was me retaking the MCAT. I was a mental health worker at the time, um, trying to still like get patient care experience and in something I already knew I enjoyed. But honestly, those were the times I looked down on myself and I was doubting myself. I didn't feel like I had anyone by my side because oftentimes it just feels like you're on the journey alone, which you kind of are, but you have to remember there's people like us that are here to support you if you have any questions. At the time, I wasn't big on social media, so I didn't know that I could ask questions to people who were already in medical school. I didn't think that that was something I could do. So, yeah, if you ever find yourself like me doubting yourself, just try to look towards mentors and having someone who will support you through the process. It was really tough. It was really tough. I was at my worst when it was the end of that special master's program, and I didn't know, I was at crossroads and I didn't know where I wanted to go. I was terrified, and I took, it's almost like a leap of faith with podiatry, because back then there was no information about podiatry, and that's actually why we started our YouTube channel and our Instagram, because I didn't want people to deal with what I dealt with. Yona thankfully had already had exposure to the field, enough exposure as a patient. I mean, that's not a blessing or anything. I'm just saying he already knew what to look for and what it was like. For me, I was almost yeah, I honestly took a leap of faith when I went and shadowed them, and I immediately applied to podiatry school. But thankfully, it ended up being exactly what I wanted. Um, So yeah, I don't know if I answered your question, but what got me through those times was just it was just having friends and family by me telling me that I could do it and that I didn't have the pressure. It's not like I had to do it. It doesn't see that's the beauty of life, right? You can take as long as you want to decide what you want out of your career. You know, you could do something to keep yourself going after college. You could put pressure on yourself because your career is going to be your life. As much as people don't like to admit it, 9 to 5 is usually what jobs are like, and that's half your day. That's a huge chunk of your day. So you want to make sure that you're waking up happy and like you're doing exactly what your passion is.
Of
Yeah,
course,
thank you.
anytime.
Of course. Thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
for those questions.
yeah, thank you.
Oh, and wait, I should, I don't think I answered. How did you figure out the next steps during your gap years? I just did whatever it took to get to my destination. So I actually applied to Caribbean medical schools. I forgot to mention that part. I didn't even apply to schools in the country. Again, don't do that. You should actually try to apply to schools in the country first. But I had applied and gotten in, and I was about to attend. And that's actually why I stepped back and fear got to me. And I was thinking, you know, what if I could go to a school here? And that's why I started going back. I went to a community college to take a few classes. By the way, community college is great. Uh, that's another thing I would tell you guys. If there's something that you didn't really understand, you can always go to community college and take a few classes there. And I did that special master program. I did the other job, and I just followed what I was interested in, and I did whatever it took for me to focus on my MCAT and do well. And yeah, just think about your goal and then take the steps backwards accordingly. And if you have to switch during that time, it's fine.
I want to thank you guys too for being here and for sharing your experiences. I'm sure the students who attended got a lot out of it. And since this is a recorded session, I'm sure many, many more students will learn from your experiences in the future. I'm going to stop the recording now.